Someone recently asked in a comment if I could share a story of my travels that was negative, something bad that happened. And usually I don't do this because I don't like to speak negatively about foreign countries that I visit. However, I realized I could do it in this case by keeping the country anonymous. I was recently traveling in a country in the mountains, hitchhiking in the mountains. And it started where I was staying with some people who had a dog. And the dog actually really liked me, and I played with the dog a lot and petted the dog, and the dog was jumping all over me, and it was very fun, and I felt like I had a friend in that family, aside from just the people in the family. Well, the next day I went off hitchhiking further into the mountains, and it was getting cold, and it was getting rainy, and it was very muddy, and it was hard to get rides. And I did end up getting some rides, but it took a long time. A lot of the rides were very short. They were just taking me sometimes from town to town. Sometimes people would drop me off before a town, and I would have to walk several kilometers, miles through the town before I could catch the next ride. It was getting colder. It was raining more. I was getting wet. My shoes were wet. It looked like it was going to snow. This in and of itself is kind of negative. It was making me stressed out, except the people I was meeting were so friendly. Everybody was so kind to me. And it was beautiful where I was, but because it was getting darker and rainier, I couldn't see so much of the view, and all I was focused on is, where am I going to sleep tonight? Well, the last ride that I got took me for about 45 minutes, and then it got dark, and the person asked me through Google Translate, because I didn't speak the language that this person spoke, where are you going to sleep tonight? And I said, I have no idea. And then they said, well, I can't let you stay in my house for X, Y, and Z reasons, but I have a friend, you can stay at their house. So the person brought me to his friend's house, a couple, they had kids, very nice people. I got there, I offered them money to stay there. They're like, no, we won't take your money. And it was okay. The only thing I had is, please, can you dry my shoes? My shoes are wet, and they're the only shoes I have. And they're like, well, we don't really bring shoes in the house, and they didn't even have heat in their house. So I was like, okay. So I left the shoes, like everybody else, just outside the door of their house. Well, didn't think much of this, but I was like, kind of disappointed, thinking in the morning I'm going to have to put on cold, wet shoes when I continue my hitchhiking. Slept well, had a nice meal with the family, ended up giving them a gift of some money. They were very grateful. And then I went downstairs, was all packed, ready to go, had my backpack on, had my little guitar with me, and picked up my shoes, and I smelled something funny. And I was like, oh my God, that's not what I think it is it? And I looked around, and about 20 feet away, peeking around the edge of their house, was a big tomcat, and he was looking at me like he did not like me. And it suddenly clicked what the smell was. A traveler's worst nightmare, especially the worst nightmare of a traveler who only has one pair of shoes. The cat had urinated in both of my shoes, and a lot of urine, and it stank, and it was still wet. Wet from the cat urine and wet from my shoes. And I looked at it and I'm like, what do I do? Yes, I had a pair of flip-flops in my backpack, but I can't wear flip-flops. It's like right at the freezing point. My feet will freeze and die, but then I'm like, oh, they're gonna freeze and die if I wear these wet shoes, but I can't go hitchhiking in the mud in flip-flops. So I put the shoes on with cat urine in them, and it stank, and I thought about it as I left the family, and I never told them what happened because I didn't want them to be embarrassed by what had happened to me in their house, this bad experience. And then I thought, gosh, when I get to the next larger town, I'm going to try to find a pair of new sneakers to buy. But then I knew it was going to be difficult, and I ended up hitchhiking all day, got to a larger town finally, went looking for new sneakers to buy, but like I thought, it was difficult, practically impossible, because my feet are too big. I'm basically taller than every single person I met in this whole country. Nobody has my shoe size. It's a very difficult shoe size to find, even difficult to find boots in my size. So for the next 6 days, I had to wear shoes that were wet and stank like cat urine. Well, finally I was able to dry them. And what I did is I took the insoles of my shoes and I took them out and threw them away and bought new insoles and bought a whole bunch of cheap insoles which I would keep replacing, but somehow that stink was all over. But what I also thought about that cat afterwards, because that little image, I wish I had taken a photo of the cat. Maybe I'll just put a different photo of some cats in just to share some cats that I've seen that remind me of this one in some ways. Well, what I thought about is, I think I know what happened. The night before I stayed at the home of this cat, I stayed with that family who had a dog, and I think that cat hated dogs, and he smelled her, the dog smell, all over my shoes, and he was like, I hate you. I hate your shoes, and I hate dogs, and I hate the smell of dogs around my house and my territory, so I'm going to get even. So in a way, this is a story of an enemy I inadvertently made on my travels.